So we are called to order. Let's start with any public comment. Anybody care to make any public comments? Yes.
Hi, I'm Rose Lindsell. I'd just like to let you guys know, you have such an asset in Bob Owens. He is a fantastic person. I mean, you know, we lost Will, and he's in and out of our school, in and out of every school. And just want you to know that I appreciate, he comes to our school, he's like a piece of gold. I call him for something, and everybody else, I'm like, where were you? 15 other people grabbed him. So we know he's going to train the new tech person really well.
I'm sure it's hard for him to walk down the hall of any school without getting yanked in 5 different directions.
Yeah, and especially by the principal.
Right. Good, that's great feedback. We'll make sure that he gets it.
Thank you.
That's great. I'll be there tomorrow, so if
Oh,
I see him,
great.
I'll mention
I
it to him.
appreciate it because I just adore his abilities.
Great. Thank you. That's a nice way to start the meeting.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? All right, hearing none, we're going to move on to reports to the board. Oh, and let me just make a note. I don't think we have any agenda changes. Does anybody want to do any agenda changes? I think we're pretty solid with what we've got. Okay, reports to the board, starting with the superintendent's report.
Okay, so my report as presented, I'm happy to answer any questions, but in addition to that, I'd like to read a letter that the board received from Cecile Gibo. So over 22 years, I have devoted my honesty, integrity, loyalty, and devotion to a position that enhanced the reputation of the Addison Northwest Supervisory Union. I am able to state this with certainty, not through my experience, but from many, many manifestations of sincere appreciation, love, and encouragement that I have received. I leave you with one word: kindness. Thank you to those of you who I've known for so many years and who have shown me kindness in our relationship. I shall never forget you. Sincerely, Cecile Gibo.
All right. And just to echo that, she sent a copy to me as well as a nice little thank you card as well, a handwritten thank you card. So
What did we end up doing for her?
We bought her a plaque of appreciation.
Nice.
And yes,
great. Well, congratulations to Cecile and best wishes for her next steps.
thank you.
That's great.
And then the other announcement, I'd just like to take the opportunity to welcome 2 of our new principals, Travis Park from the Addison Central School, Travis, and Beth Brody from Ferrisburg Central School.
Hi, Beth.
All right. Welcome.
That's it.
All right. Any questions for Joanne? All right, hearing none, let's move on to the business manager report. I think you all saw the supplemental information that Glory sent out, maybe it was yesterday, with some financial information in it. Tanya, do you want to start, or do you want to just take questions?
If anybody has any questions, that'd be great, and then I can.
Have you all had a chance to look at that? I think
This one
we have
also
some paper handouts as well, if you haven't seen it.
I have a question, Bill.
Yes.
So Tanya, on the back, estimated fund balances to be returned. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little confused, and maybe I'm not getting the numbers right, but why is the central office fund balance surplus 119, but on the first page it's 94? There
You have to add in the additional revenue that we received.
I'll do that. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Tanya, or do you need a few more minutes to look over the report?
I might as well ask you now.
Go ahead.
Okay.
I think others are still looking
Okay.
anyway.
VUHS got their report this time also. Is this 441 included in there? No kidding.
Yeah, no kidding. I can't include it in that because these are unaudited numbers, so these numbers may change. So, I mean, this is an estimate of what may be coming back to you, but I did not include that in the numbers for the individual schools, no.
So this is spectacular.
Yes.
We had a number of, and please remember, I did give the board a summary report at the end of last year concerning why we felt we were in the surplus. There were a number of changes with special education students moving out of the district, and that contributes to one of the reasons why. In the central office, we didn't fill fully a position in curriculum, and we had some staff changes that also impacted the bottom line. So we were able to end the year with a fund balance.
If I may. Tanya, so I understand that these are unaudited figures. However, you don't anticipate that there will be a substantial difference when the audit's complete? Okay, thank you.
Go ahead. Kate.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I was looking at. Kick me under the table.
Electronics.
Right. No, I'm actually. I'm not doing like Pokemon Go or something.
So, special ed is a special character, but $700,000 surplus is, again, spectacular. Is really the majority of this not students that we thought we were going to care for, but we didn't?
A lot of it had to do with students that transitioned. And remember, we also went to a model that we were hoping would be a cost savings,
Right.
and it did wind up being a cost savings. But the students I'm talking about had high cost programs with associated costs like transportation that can add a lot.
Yeah.
And so,
meaning they transitioned out, meaning
Yes.
they went to another district?
So we also had tuition savings. We had transportation savings.
And that's
we're
because of
not-
these new people?
Because we're keeping children here instead of transporting
Yeah.
them to other programs. And we saved a lot of money on the CSAC contracts because we didn't need as many services for kids. Other than, you'll notice that the preschool CSAC contract was increased because we had a lot of preschool kids that needed services, but not K to 12.
Nowhere near as much.
No. And I can say, just having reviewed the bills over the last year, that they keep getting smaller and smaller, and it's been great. And as far as I know, there hasn't been any change, and we're still offering great services to these kids. It's not like they've felt any of the impact. Maybe even better services because they're more coordinated.
right.
This is the result of the work that Kara does.
It is the result
Yeah.
of the work that Kara does
Yes.
with her staff.
I think that we should, as a board,
I'd be happy to,
Acknowledge.
now that we've seen some, I know they're not audited yet, but we've got some pretty solid numbers. I think we've known for a while, just from talking to her in the direction that she's headed. I'd be happy to draft up some kind of letter of appreciation for her from the board.
Along the same lines, I would just like to mention that we did have a SPED monitoring this past year. Through the state, the Agency of Education. They call it a desk monitoring. Really, they audited our special ed expenditures. And we passed with flying colors, and the only thing was about $400 were disallowed in expenses that we had to just move to the general fund. So that's huge. Time studies where we didn't have to, salaries and benefits were right on based on the time studies. And that's all Kara's work too. She manages that very, very well.
It's just, as long as we're singing her praises, let me also mention that my day job at Medicaid, we're looking at your school-based health services model, our school-based health service. Medicaid bill and SU bill as a model for others in the state who are struggling with it. And so we're writing an algorithm kind of based on what you're already doing here.
Wow,
So
that's
that's just
nice,
another,
Bill.
it is a really great program. We should be proud of it.
Thank you.
Good, and it saves money. So even if you don't care about anything else, it saves money. Everybody cares about that, at least. Right. Were there any other questions for Tanya? All right.
So the other thing is I have an update on the audit. The auditor, the new auditing firm, RHR Smith, came in the end of June. And they were there for 3 straight days. I will let you know that they did review the previous year's audit, and they found major issues with it.
Okay.
So we really have to start from the beginning. This may affect fund balances.
Okay.
There was a lot of cleanup work. The example that they told me to give you was the ending balances for 15 in the audit do not match the beginning balances for 16 in our system. They did not give me any correcting journal entries. So in fact, they told me to make them up myself.
Okay.
So the new auditing firm said you absolutely do not make up correcting journal entries yourself. They are
don't make
supposed to
up-
come from the auditor. So I just wanted to let you know that we do have to backtrack a little, and their exact quote was, "These audits are crap."
Okay. So to bring everybody up to speed, and then we'll take some questions. We chose not to continue with another contract year with the previous firm. We stopped that for cause. I copied, so the letter that I sent to that auditing firm, I copied the Secretary of State's office, the board responsible for certification and licensure of auditors, of CPAs. I'm trying to be careful. I want to make sure that I can say what can be said publicly and what can't be said publicly. We would do in a closed session, of course, but just suffice it to say that they will do what they do with that information. I don't know what that means, but your experience now with the new auditor is bringing up some additional information that may be relevant to the Secretary of State's office, and so it may be good if you've
Bill,
been in
we have
touch.
spoken,
Okay.
we have both spoken to that
Good.
representative at length and are open to any follow-up that they need.
Okay, good. I mean, we've moved on, but it may be good for them to know about that. Okay.
So then they are coming back October 10th, that week. They will be here 5 days.
Good.
They will have probably a team of 3. They are going to bang it out, and they guarantee that I will have final audits in my hand December 1st.
I don't even know what that's like.
Okay, so I want to stand up and legit. That is such awesome news. Thank you.
Very good. So we're, smooth sailing, lessons learned, and that's good. I don't know what else to say. George, say something.
So in essence, what they're going to do is repeat last year's audit.
No, they're not going to repeat it, but we need to get the balances in line.
You have to have a good starting point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they
And
don't.
the starting point that they've got is the last audit that
Yeah.
Peisch did.
So really, they have to figure out if that starting point is accurate or not, and then
Okay.
get there.
Yeah.
Fair
So
enough.
they have told Joanne and I that I will pretty much be off limits that week, and I will be in the conference room with them constantly.
Okay.
Is this going to cost us more than the
No,
contract?
It will not cost you more.
no,
Great.
it will not.
That's amazing.
So they will be available for the December meetings. I don't know what the schedule looks like,
Okay.
but they do guarantee that.
We'll have it in our hand before we have to present a budget.
Won't that be
That's,
amazing?
yeah, I don't even know, like I said, I don't
Ooh.
even know what that's like.
How do we,
I don't think that's happened.
how are we going to do that? We're going to have the information that we need to make a budget?
And to answer questions?
Ooh,
Yeah,
Crazy.
no, this is great.
crap.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, the good news continues. Anything else from or for Tanya? Okay, I have, I'll move on to 3C, board member report. I have some closure on something that it's not really good news as much as it is, I just think it's good closure for the district on something that was really difficult for the SU, for something that was really difficult that we went through around the time Tom O'Brien left. And we've been handling most of this in closed session because there was still the potential for some legal action to happen. And at this point, I can report on what we know now, which is that the state prosecutor has opted not to pursue formal charges with Tom. But what we had asked for, we worked with the victim's advocate, we being Jeff Glassberg and I on behalf of the board, and the feedback we received from the board in closed session. We worked with the victim's advocate to talk about what we thought the supervisory union's needs and wants were as far as how to pursue this. So the real question around, there were a couple of things that happened that, and I don't want to dig up old stuff because we really have moved on, but I feel like it's fair to have closure for members of the public who had been following this. One of the issues we had was that we received a letter from the Agency of Education that indicated that we were at risk of suspension or had already had our funds suspended because of some issues with the management of the prior administration of our superintendent's office. That was never brought to the board, despite there being several opportunities for that to happen. It wasn't brought to our board until the first day of work of our new superintendent, who immediately let us all know about that. We also had a dispute around payout for unused vacation leave for the prior superintendent, and a dispute on that the contract did not allow what had actually happened. And, just our concern over breaking the public trust. And so the closure that we have in all of this is that we received a check from Mr. O'Brien paying off the disputed vacation and leave payment. So we've been made whole to that end. Mr. O'Brien agreed to do that. He wasn't forced to. And he sent us a letter acknowledging and apologizing for breaking the public trust, for improperly requesting that payment be made, and for failing to notify us of the letter from the Agency of Education. He apologized, said that this was an error that he had made, and I just wanted to bring that up. In my mind, it's a closed issue now, and we can move on. Tom can move on, and that's that. Any questions? Yes.
I don't have a question, a comment. I said this to you earlier, but this letter of apology would not have been here if not for Jeff and Bill's incredible tenacity in this issue. There was so much crap that we had to get through to get to this letter. It's impressive, and Jeff Glassberg did a huge amount of work to get us here so that our community could feel healed.
Yeah.
And Bill picked up the slack when Jeff left.
I only
so-
did the last 5%, honestly. That was really Jeff. So I've been in contact with him with what can be said publicly, because he's not on this board anymore. And I'll pass that on to him, but he hears it every time I talk to him. It's great what he did. He put a lot of time into it. All right. So yes.
I would just like to say thank you for sharing that, because you didn't have to. And I have been at a lot of the board meetings and been following the newspaper and stuff about Tom, and was curious as to what was happening at the board level.
Yeah.
And I appreciate, when Joanne came on, she was transparent, she put everything out there, and I'm glad that you're doing the same.
Well, thanks for the
Thank you.
feedback. It's certainly nothing that any of us takes any pleasure in, but
Oh,
it's
I know.
closure, and we move on,
Thank
So,
you
but
very
thanks for the feedback. Okay, and speaking of moving on, let's move on to action items. So, item number 4A, approval of minutes from the June 15th meeting. Can we start with a motion to approve?
So moved.
And
Second.
Second, okay. Any comments or changes to those? Yes.
Sorry, I totally displaced it. I only had a suggestion of one word, the top of the second page. The motion to authorize the superintendent to offer contracts to 2 recommendations. If the word "those" to 2 recommendations was added, then it would tie the recommendations to the motion to offer the same recommendation to
Yep.
the same people that were recommended, as opposed to just 2 recommendations.
Yes,
Okay.
that was the intention. Gloria, does that make sense?
I'm sorry. So the sentence on the top of page 2, to authorize the superintendent to offer contracts to those 2 recommendations.
Any other corrections or edits? All right, hearing none, if there are no objections, I would like to dispense with the normal having us vote on the amended version first, and just say that I'm asking you to approve the amended minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. And our next item is approval of bills and director's orders. Is the dollar amount on here somewhere? Take your time. Let me just give my quick normal spiel. I've done the same review I've been doing all along and have not seen any problems. It continues to become more organized and easier for me when I come in. So thank you to Martha and Carol for that. And I'll be there in the morning,
What time?
probably 7:15-ish. It's either that or early afternoon, or I mean late afternoon.
I'll be there at 7.
Okay, great. I'll try to be there at 7 as well then. That'll be easier.
$1,088,205.63.
I'm hoping George is getting that because I'm going to need somebody to make a motion.
Okay, say again, 1,088,000,
$205.63.
205.63. I so move that we pay.
Is there a second? Thanks, Chris. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries and the bills can be paid. Do we have any hiring recommendations to go through tonight? Okay.
We do. I have 4 professional staff people to recommend for hire this evening. The first is Nicholas DeVita. He's a new school psychologist. This is actually a new position. It was in the budget that Kara presented to you, and it will go to continuing to make the changes that we need to make in special education to address cost and quality. The next is Jody Lambrecht. She will be a special educator and be replacing Marcy Fox. The next one is Cynthia Coons. She will be a .6 Triple E teacher. And then the last one is Marcy Tierney. She is a full-time preschool teacher. And both of these will be replacing Deb Angier. Remember, I had mentioned last year that the Triple E position and the preschool position was combined in Deb's position in the last couple of years. But with the emerging of a number of new preschool students, we've had to expand the preschool part of it. So that concludes the 4 professional positions.
Okay.
So that amounted to how many FTEs?
That is a total of 3.6 FTEs.
Thank you.
So for ease of passage, I would recommend a motion approving all 3 of these recommendations, and we can address any concerns with,
There's 4.
I'm sorry. All 4, we can address any concerns via amendments if that sounds all right.
I'll make said motion.
Is that all right? Yeah,
Second.
Second. Thank you. Any discussion or questions? All right. Hearing none, all in favor of supporting these 4 recommendations for hire, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
And Bill, the next are just announcements because we had some changes in the central office. This past summer, Tina Paquin, the assistant to the curriculum director, took another job, and she's being replaced by Peggy Connor. And we replaced Cecile Gibo with a person that has an HR background. We're very, very lucky to have her, and her name is Susan Anderson Brown. I do not need board approval for that. I'm just making an announcement because these are not the
Right.
professional positions.
Right. Okay. All right, we're ready to move on to the next item, which is superintendent evaluation. We did complete the evaluation that we talked about last time, and I think we wanted to put that on as an agenda item so that we were thinking about it more proactively in the future. I don't know if there are any questions. I think it's a little early yet for us to have formally started drafting anything, but were there any thoughts that you had on this?
Yeah, Bill, remember when you and George and I went through it, I had some clarification questions?
Oh, yes, that's right.
So I came prepared to ask
right.
that of the board this evening, and any board members that are in the audience, you certainly can participate. So first, let me say I really appreciate the feedback. You know, an evaluation is important to me because it helps to give me direction whether I'm on the right track or not. It helps me set some goals and also to know what's important to board members. So I appreciated that, and I thought that George and Bill did a nice job. Thank you. There were a couple of things that were given to me in terms of comments and recommendations, and I just need some clarification. The first is that the board would like more focus on providing education to this board in regard to policy governance and to lead a process to determine whether the A&W SU board should adopt policy governance as an operational model. And my question is, do you know what you're asking me to do? Because the way that this board operates is not under a policy governance model. The new board is actually exploring what that might mean. So it's not really a recommendation that I would be following up with you about, but I wanted to bring it to your attention to see what your intention was in making that recommendation to me.
And since I imagine the rest of the board will give you the same glassy-eyed stare George and I did when we were learning what this, well, if I could speak for you. Sorry. George would never let me speak for him if I misspoke, so I'll take that chance. But would you mind giving a quick primer on that?
It's based on the work of John Carver. It was originally developed for nonprofits. It has different language. All of the decision-making paradigms are actually listed in policy, so it gives the superintendent parameters around what's fair for me to make decisions about and where I need to get board approval. There are fiscal policies that are very much similar to what you're working under now. And then the last policy is around what we want for our students. Currently, we have a public engagement committee for the ANSD board that would be developing what we would see in a policy under policy governance called the ENDS policy. So that is a very quick overview.
Yeah, right.
It is very structured. The roles and responsibilities of both the superintendent and board members are very prescribed.
Right.
So it helps us to stay in our sandbox so that, there are parameters and boundaries around the way in which we interact and hold meetings.
Is this the sort of thing that if we started it now, we would have it just in place to implement in time for this SU to no longer exist?
Right.
So that was kind of the feedback George and I gave, but it wasn't our decision to make. So we wanted to see what folks think. Not that I guess I've just tried to color your opinion, which I'm not supposed to do, but there is the reality of the calendar.
If I may, the fact of the matter is that it's the SD that would be implementing that if we were to go forward with it. I think it would be a waste of the time of this board to engage in it. I'm not so sure that I like it anyway. I think it's very, very structured and restrictive, but that'll be up to the SD board to decide, but they are looking at it.
Joanne, do you know?
Go ahead. No.
Do you know? I think Orange Southwest uses policy governance.
It is Orange Southwest. There's
Is that the? Do you have another one that does?
Orleans Southwest,
Okay.
South Burlington, Hartford School District,
Okay.
Montpelier, thank you. Addison Northeast, it's a hybrid.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
So it sounds like the feedback Joanne is taking from us so far is not to pursue policy governance for the SU. If anybody is not comfortable with that, please let us know now. I don't think we need to take a vote on this,
No.
but we'll just,
She had another question.
yes.
I'm certainly comfortable with what you've just said, Bill. I just, as our elementary school board, I don't remember requesting such a look at policy structure unless it came out of a question that if we wanted more information, then was that extrapolated into, then it would be configured this way? Because I don't remember that question being posed to us.
Yeah, go ahead, George.
The evaluation process included input from everyone on all of the boards,
Yep,
and so that may have been only one person
okay.
that wrote that as a comment, but because it was not part of the mainstream, it was picked up and brought in. I think that what we tried to do when we were talking with Joanne and in the refinement that Bill did to the points of our discussion before we sat down was to make sure that nothing was left out. We wanted to give all of the feedback possible to Joanne.
Go ahead.
And a follow-up is, I think one of the reactions to the evaluation form was that it didn't work for us in so many ways.
Oh, yeah.
So that was that also discussed, or are we just
Yeah.
gonna march on with that same form?
No, I think we don't want to try to create something entirely new for the last year, but we definitely talked about trying to have these discussions more often because it became clear, this was just one example. I think Joanne may have a few others to talk about tonight. It became clear that when Joanne was asking George and I as representatives of the SU,
And I apologize for not being there.
oh, it's okay. We understand. Don't worry about it. We were able to answer probably 95% of the questions, but there were a few where it was like, oh, I'm not entirely sure where we were going with that because we didn't feel like it wasn't our comment. We could speak for the things that we knew or had discussed, but not all of those had been discussed. So I think we want to do something different for next year. I'd like to have it maybe once a quarter. And there were a few things that we asked Joanne to come back to us and just like let's have that discussion. Maybe once a quarter we can have a closed session to just sit down and talk about how it's going, and to just do that and document it so that when we were ready at the end of the year, it wouldn't be like this hand out the survey to everybody and fill it out in one day.
And the timing issue too, because by the time we sat down with Joanne, it was way, way, way
Yeah.
past when we should have completed that process.
Yeah.
So we need to, and that's what Bill said, that he put it on here so that it comes to the surface and we're all thinking about it. We really need to start this process now,
Yeah.
going forward.
Well, I think the process needs a form. And anything that we can do to make that form better will also help the next board, I think, instead of, it's not just talking about more frequently, but in a more meaningful way that form doesn't seem to allow you to do.
I agree with you personally. I don't know about Bill, but I think that form needs to undergo a drastic revision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used a lot of evaluation forms over the years, and some of them are less terrible than others, but they all never quite seem to get at it. But I think what we need to do is, in narrative form, whenever possible, just describe what it is that we're looking for and ask the questions ahead of time. So I think we're all on the same page with that.
The only problem with the narrative is that you don't get the same feedback on all of the
That's right,
subjects from
yeah.
everybody.
That's right. There's a reason why this is a whole, staff evaluation is a whole industry with lots of books and seminars, because nobody's nailed down a perfect process. But it's certainly not our process. Our process is far from perfect, so I think we can do better. You had a couple of other, let me just make sure, you had a few other items that you wanted to bring up. Would it make more sense to have you,
It does.
okay.
It's fine.
No, that's all right.
We were talking
hands
about
up.
the evaluation and how it changed. One of the things that came up at the high school board many times was that we would really like to have, I think they call it a 360?
Yes,
Yeah.
we did talk about that.
Right,
Yeah.
and that would require quite a bit of
Yeah.
work, I believe.
It does, yeah.
And in case anybody doesn't know what that means, maybe you could help me. There's 360, it's talking about getting evaluation
Yeah,
information from the
direct
staff.
reports, peers, the board, even external agencies who may have worked, or like Agency of Education, and piecing all of that together. The beauty of it is you get a more diverse collection of input from people. The downside is some of that input might not be entirely fair or accurate too. So you've got to be careful about your sources.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How does the evaluation process, how's it going to work with the transition? Like right now we're having this discussion and, we have input and everyone can speak for their individual schools about what they put on the evaluations if there's questions. But next year, how does that work? We as a board fill out the evaluation as one and then we give it to someone else to try and go over? What's the process?
Yeah, go.
The A&W SU board still remains my main employer until July 1st of 2017.
I
So maybe with a different form, but the process would still be the same, that I would
Okay.
be evaluated by individual boards, and then the SU board members would collate that information and come up with a final
Okay.
tool.
And that's
All right,
then
that
the,
makes sense.
then the handoff
Okay.
happens to the SD
Okay.
instead.
So we need to be having this conversation earlier.
We do. We're
obviously,
still on the
which
hook
is
for
whole-
one more year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
And then the last area is my own professional growth. It was indicated that board members don't really know how what I've done to grow professionally. And so my question to you is, what evidence or what kind of a report would you expect from me to know that your educational leader is engaging in learning opportunities all the time? Is it a summary report? Is it a reflection? Is it a presentation to the board when I go for professional development opportunities? What do you think would be good evidence?
I think that it would be something that you would put into your vita almost. Everything that you've done that year, where you've gone, seminars you've attended, anything at all that you think has broadened your scope and expertise.
Great.
And I don't think it has to be narrative. I think if you can just list them for everybody, it'd be much easier for the individual board member to see them and to see the breadth of your experience.
Good.
Chris?
Where I work, before your annual evaluation, you get this form with a couple of very vague questions, and I think maybe something like that could be developed that asks about your professional development. And it's just a small little form. You fill out a couple of paragraphs just to say, hey, you guys, I've been telling you all this all year, but you forgot about it. So here it is, so you can take a look at it right now, right before my evaluation, so it's fresh in your mind.
And if we do this, if we use that form and then have the conversation periodically with you in a closed session, that'll prompt us to ask that question, so that at the end of the year, our feedback to Joanne wasn't that we thought she had failed in that area, it was that we thought we couldn't evaluate her in that area because we hadn't asked enough
didn't
questions, so,
Right. Right.
good.
So that's all I have. That's helpful for clarification purposes. And again, thank you.
Yes.
Superintendent goals.
Yes.
That I would think that would be a really good way of us evaluating you if you had your goals split out, including your professional development, right? And we should be able to evaluate based on those goals.
Right.
So do you think you'll have those sometime?
I actually have those goals. I was waiting for this evening to get further clarification, and I'd be happy to share that with the A&W board in October when we meet again.
Okay,
Great.
thank you.
Are we all set with this agenda item?
Oh, I have one more thing. Would it be a good idea to have this board start a committee to look at the evaluation process? The Addison, or the school district, the new school district board is got their hands full, seriously full. And so to have us look at the evaluation, which is really important,
It is.
it's really important, is a little onerous. And I wonder, this board, we're going to have a 45-minute meeting here, and I just wondered if anybody would be interested in maybe doing a little side work.
Chris?
Couldn't that direction come from the new board? I mean, I'd hate to put together a committee, work all year on something
Yeah.
that they don't adopt.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
at
like if
their
we
request,
asked you guys-
I mean, I think
Yeah.
we have.
That's a good idea, actually.
We can take care of that for you on the 31st.
I'll make sure we get you some.
I mean,
Well, can we-
that's
but
where
if
my
you had some
disconnect is
direction-
because I'm not on that board. I
Right.
don't know how all that.
Can we
would
try? Can we try this? See if this would work. If Joanne or Glory, whoever keeps track of these things, probably both of you, schedule a closed session for our next meeting of the SU board just to talk about evaluation. We can bring the current evaluation tool and just kind of walk through it, not to do the evaluation, but just to check in with Joanne on some things. And I think from there, maybe that'll give us a sense for, do we need to develop a new process, or do we need substantial modifications to the current form, or does the current form work as long as our process is better around it? Would it be better before we form a committee to just try that out for a closed session?
I could also get some models from the Vermont School Boards Association, bring it with me.
We've looked at that. I think we've kind of looked at them in the past. I
They're
don't
working on a
know.
new one right now.
Oh, are they?
There
Okay.
is a revision going on, and I have not seen it, but.
I mean, this has been ongoing for, I'd say, the
Yeah.
past 4 years.
It has.
Yeah.
The problem with the evaluation. And I guess my concern is too, just like Chris, we have limited time.
Right.
We don't have a mandate from the combined board to do this. Do they want it? Should we do this work if it comes out to be something that they're not even pleased with, you know? I don't think we can do it without their input.
But what we could,
Having
go ahead.
as much experience as we have had, though, we know they're going to want it. I mean, they're not going to want the same form that we've struggled with. So I
Yeah.
think that's a good idea, Bill, if we could just even tweak it a little, take a little edge off of the new board.
You know,
Right,
starting
but,
point.
I mean, I think
Right.
that's
Yeah.
the point, is if they want us to do it.
Right.
Or maybe they want to do it because they want it the way they want it. That's all I'm suggesting is if
Yeah.
they need some help, of course, we're here.
We're
to
the
help.
employer for another year, so we
Yeah.
could do a better job, even if we
Make
weren't
ourselves
anymore.
comfortable,
Even if
too.
we were gonna cancel out public education after this
I will have
board
to use
dissolves.
this one more time.
Yeah, we do.
Well, we have to use something one more time.
So if I may, I think because it's 2 months before this board meets, that it would be appropriate to form the committee and not do anything until after the 31st. We'll bring this to the SD board, and if they approve of this process being started on this board, then you can fire up the committee. Does that make sense? We're gonna save them over a month and a half in the process.
I feel more comfortable if our goal was designed at just improving the current evaluation system we have, because this SU board needs to do it for another year. And as an added side effect, a little bonus, if we come up with a process that the SD is comfortable with, we can hand that off to them. That way we can move forward doing what we need to do without, we wouldn't even need to wait. Because either way, even if the SD says, no, we don't want your input, we still can do a better job. Well, look, are there folks who would be interested in being on such a committee? Probably not. We probably won't be meeting right away, as George indicated.
I would.
Yeah, I was going to say, 'cause people that have been on the board a long time would
Yeah,
be really helpful.
right. Okay.
Well, forming a committee is different than hanging out in executive session and collaboratively working on something. So which way are we going? Because forming a new committee sounds not as appealing as just working on
Yeah.
something together in an executive session.
It would be at least 3 people. It would, we would have we would have to have warned meetings outside of this, and some clear mandate that would be supported through a passed motion now. Chris?
Could we get away with doing the old task force?
You know, with I don't want to try to, I see what you're saying. I don't want
And
to try
maybe
to.
even bringing in community involvement. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't want to make, well, look, it's not my call to make. Yeah. If we do it, let's do this out in the public. If people want to come in and give public feedback, they can do that. Just a regular publicly warned meeting. This isn't secret. It's not secret until we start plugging in actual feedback to a specific employee. Then it becomes confidential. But I feel like I'm getting, mixed thoughts on whether we want to do this committee, and we're getting close to wrap time. What do you think, Jason?
I mean, I think it's a form that has been, difficult to work with. I don't know. Joanne can tell us if she thinks it's an effective way to get feedback. Many of our questions, you alluded to it earlier, it's not that we doubted these things, it's just that we weren't the right people to answer them, we felt.
Right.
I think a better form should be considered only having this board exist for a year. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to do all the correct legwork for it. That being said, I think there are some fairly easy tweaks that we could do without needing to make a huge deal out of it. So I guess I'd be more interested in having an executive session to discuss it. And if at that time Joanne says none of these things work for me and it's a much bigger deal, then so be it. But at this point, it seems like for our needs, just to give a little better information, we don't need to rework the whole thing, knowing there's a whole nother group there that's going to have their own issue. It's going to be a very different organization, a smaller group of people. They're going to have a better way to do it. So we could come up with a great model, and it still might not work for them. So
Okay. Thanks for the feedback. We have exactly 1 minute. If somebody would care, we've heard feedback from both sides of that argument, the committee question. If somebody would like to make a motion to create the committee, now would be the time. If not, we can discuss this further in executive session next time when we can talk specifically about Joanne. And I know that didn't sound very nice, what I just said.
I just want to say, again, that we run into time issues all the time.
Yes.
And we're not meeting again until October. And her evaluation is due April 1.
Okay. Maybe as a compromise, I will commit to taking a look at the current form, seeing if I can make some tweaks to it, and sending that out to everybody for your review prior to our next meeting. That way, we certainly can't meet over email, but at least we can get the wheels started turning.
Would you include your goals in that at
Okay.
the same
I
time?
think that's a
Because
good-
I really think meshing your goals with your evaluation is a really, really, really good
Yeah,
idea.
absolutely. I think that's good, and the timing is good for that.
So thank you.
Okay. We-
Bill, could you
yes.
also just send it out to us again, the form,
Yeah,
just so that we
the
can.
current form.
Yep. so
Yeah,
we can-
and I would welcome anybody else's edits too, if
Okay.
you've got your own thoughts
Okay.
about that.
Thank you.
Okay, we are out of time. I'm going to have we don't need a motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.